Welcome to the X Podcast. Happy New Year, 2021. We're here.
Happy New Year.
We finally made it.
It is 2021.
Everything's changed.
First episode of 21.
Vaccine is close. Virus is gone.
Actually, I saw the sign that you mentioned after
Did you?
Sunday driving to the zoo.
Wasn't it inspiring?
New Year, same virus.
Yeah.
Mask up, Ohio. I was like, whoa. Oh my God.
Oh, it's good to be with you. However you are partaking in this podcast, we are just glad that you're part of our X fam, our podcast fam. And we, as always, would love if you would send in some feedback, some input, maybe send us some questions. We love all the hard questions that we could ever answer and tackle on this podcast. So send it in, podcast@thex.church. My name's Kevin. I'm here with my boys, Russ and Tim. It's good to see you. Little late birthday celebration for you.
Yes.
I should have got a cake.
That would have been great.
Funfetti!
Last
Funfetti.
time you made, I couldn't eat the cake. So anyways, we'll talk about that later. But yeah.
Well, happy
Last time
birthday.
Thank you. Last time you forced me to eat really, really hot wings.
Yes.
So a cake would have been a pleasant surprise.
I hope that if you're listening that you watched or listened to that episode.
That's
Hope,
so good.
We
preferably
apologize for the
watched.
audio. We had
Right.
some technical difficulty, but we were not redoing that.
But it was
You were
totally
dying.
worth it.
I was.
You were dying. I was
were.
good.
You
Your
were
guys'
red.
lips still look red.
Thank you.
I watched it over the holiday break with family and they were just obviously they were like, Kevin, you took it so well.
Were they inspired by my
You were
strength?
so tough.
I
Okay.
like that stuff. That's
And then
why.
and then you guys were just suffering the entire time.
Yes.
I saw the subject line.
Yeah. For the email. that went out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Russ suffers.
Yes.
Russ
From hot
suffers
sauce. That was
from
great.
hot sauce.
It was fun.
Oh man, but New Year.
Yeah.
In our church, we kind of have a tradition, and all of us together, we like to do a fast to begin the new year. Some people do resolutions. Some people have just some different traditions around the new year. For us, we do like 3 weeks, 21 days of prayer and fasting because hopefully everybody knows by now we're in a church context. The three of us are pastors, and we really invite our whole church into giving something up in pursuit of a relationship with God or to grow spiritually in a new year, in a new season. And how much do we all need it after a year like 2020?
Yeah.
Just need some fresh insight, some clarity, some encouragement, and new vision and direction. I think we all could use it. But it's funny because I don't know if you guys have had conversations with anybody that isn't familiar with the concept. We have intermittent fasting. We have also, like, that word has kind of made its way around.
Yeah.
But the concept of saying no to something, the concept of giving up something. Hey, let's celebrate the start of the year by not doing something that we enjoy or that we like. It's kind of a foreign concept, and I'd love to just kind of talk about the power that we can lean into when we say no. That this world is so full of opportunities. It's so full of different ideas. Like that, there's a whole concept now. I think it's a word that's just been created probably in the last 10 years. FOMO. We don't want FOMO. We have a fear of missing out, fear of not doing something that we could be doing, fear of not hanging out with somebody that we can hang out with. We're always comparing ourselves to other people on socials. There's always a new hill to climb, hill to charge, new adventure to take. And so why would anybody ever say no?
Why don't you take that? You go first.
Why would anybody say no? Well, there are things worth saying no to, things that are not beneficial to say no to or that could be damaging to say no to. So I think there's a lot of context. There's saying no to I think the issue is every day we say no to something. So the reason it's important to say no is if we don't say no to certain things, then we won't live for the things that actually matter.
Right.
Because to say yes is automatically say no. When someone says yes to a life partner, to a spouse, they're saying a million no's.
Yeah.
Or maybe they feel like they don't have any no's they've said
Are you
no to.
telling us from personal experience?
Yeah, I want you to know I understand
This
now.
podcast is for you, Russ. What are you giving up for Lent? Or Lent. You know what I mean? I had a big conversation with Lent with all my Catholic family the
Yeah.
other night. So that was fun.
Yeah, well, for Lent, I am for Ash Wednesday.
Yeah.
No, for my fast, I'm doing what I usually, very similar to what I usually do. So, only drinking water and coffee.
Yep.
Staying pretty clean for the most part on what I'm eating, but more than anything, I am abstaining from social media, and I'm only listening to worship music unless I'm at the gym. That's my.
Why? What are you listening to when
Instead of trap music.
instead of worship music? Why?
Because I don't understand how people listen to podcasts or worship at the gym.
I do.
Like, how can you do that? How can you be in the middle of a bicep
The Lord
curl?
is my strength.
I can't, like, that doesn't, no, like, I need something that's going to make me slightly angry.
Yeah.
I need something,
don't.
I need aggressive music. I just, probably something wrong with me, but I just need something slightly aggressive
Elton John.
in the gym. Like a candle in the
It's
wind.
gonna
Oh my
be
gosh.
a long, long time.
So, yeah, that.
What was, never mind. Move on.
And then I'm trying to think. Those are the main things. On Tuesdays, I'm just doing. We're having Tuesday nights of prayer in here, and so I'm just kind of doing a liquid fast on Tuesdays.
So the better question is, what aren't you fasting?
What am I not?
I'm just.
You're right. I am pretty spiritual.
Oh,
Russ like I'm giving up food and water and
Yeah.
trap music. I mean, what's left?
It's just kind of who I am.
I'm just kidding. That's good. What about you?
what about me? What am I fasting?
Yeah, what are you fasting?
So I am.
Every year I've heard you fast. Sweets, meats, and social tweets. That was this thing.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Have you ever heard that?
No.
Yeah.
No, that's new to
Yeah.
me. Meats, tweets, and social sweets?
So-
No.
Meats,
no.
tweets, and treats.
No, what is it?
It was. I used to do meat, so I would basically go.
You can't say
vegetarian,
it to where it sounds cooler
and I
than
would
when
do.
you
Yeah.
say it.
And I would do sweets. So if it was a sweet, sugar-based product,
Yeah.
and not if it had sugar in it, but if it was a
Sugar-based product.
sweet-based, like
If it was a classical
no cookies.
Just in case
no
you didn't know
cookies,
what
no
sweet
candy bars,
was.
no ice cream. Well, you'd be shocked at how many foods I'm finding out have sugar in them.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
there's sugar in stuff that you would not consider a sweet. So I'm discovering that in what I'm fasting now.
Yeah.
In social media.
No
so
Pop-Tarts with
no
sugar
Pop-Tarts,
added?
Yeah.
No, the toaster strudel had sugar.
I had no idea.
It even says vitamin A and D on the Pop-Tart package.
You know what? It's breakfast, right? It's
true.
That's not
Yeah.
a sweet. So yeah, I'm fasting work. I thought I would
Okay.
just yeah.
I've noticed
I'm
you
doing
haven't
a
been
lot,
in this
lot
week.
less days at the office.
Yeah.
No, I'm fasting. I'm fasting sugar and carbs, so which are my two favorite things in the world. I'm fasting sugar and carbs, so kind of doing a keto type thing. Which, by the way, it's impossible to not have any carbs because they even have them in some of the greenest vegetables. I found that out, but like a 1 gram, 2 grams. So I'm fasting that, and I am fasting social media. I think that's the best fast to me is social media. To be able to disconnect and clear your mind because you hear there's so many competing voices every day.
Yeah.
Not telling you what to do, but just in your scroll and what you're listening to.
Yeah.
And
I've noticed
so
that when I've been
that's
coming in the
helpful.
morning, you haven't been doing like your morning TikToks as
Yeah.
often.
Yeah, look for them. Anyways.
Yeah. Do you think, Russ, because you kind of came up here a couple years ago, and so why don't you tell us, is it different what people fast from state to state? Or like different geographical contexts? And I mean, is that a thing, or am I just making that up?
Probably not. I think the idea of kicking the year off with a fast is probably more normative in, Bible Belt type of geography of, the Southeast or whatever. But as far as what to fast, I feel like nowadays everybody, social media is kind of a go-to for a lot of people. Some people take it. I mean, I know people that will literally just not. They'll do liquid. They won't even do any food for like the first week or whatever. And so I don't know. Probably not as much, other than the fact that in more, I guess, Christianity-rich circles, where again, like Bible Belt type of areas of the Southeast, probably fasting's a little bit more like a normative
Right.
of something they would do.
It's funny too because when I talk to people who wouldn't consider themselves church people or Jesus people, they're very open to the concept of
Yeah.
fasting. Like, there's something I think innate inside of us that we know. Maybe it's just American culture that we have overburdened our lives. That our heads are so full, our lives are so full that the idea of withholding or abstaining from something or partaking in something, I think there's something inherent inside of us right now that we know we need to.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe it's something that God's put inside of us. And I'm doing social media. It's the first time I've ever fasted social media.
Really?
Yes. And I
Wow. It's great. I recommend it for. I think every person, regardless of whether or not you're a faith person or not, needs to have some rhythm of fasting social media.
Well, what's funny, it's that I
grew up with it. That's what.
well, that's I like to be on social, so I've never done that. But we're 3 days in, and I probably looked at my phone a million times, like in order to get it. But my focus is incredible.
Yeah.
You don't realize how distracting it is.
Oh,
Where just like you're always reaching for it. Every time your phone buzzes, you're reaching and looking and just getting distracted. And so I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Now, I will say,
Yeah.
one of the things I did years ago that I thought was super beneficial if you're going to use social media is I removed all notifications.
Yeah.
So if you are, I removed notifications from most everything except for email. But my personal email, I don't get a ton of stuff, and I don't feel like I have to look at it all the time. A lot of it's junk email.
Yeah.
But I remove notifications from almost every app that I have, and I think that allows me to sustain kind of a life where it's not every buzz and vibrate and whatever that I feel drawn to it.
Well,
so I mean, even after the fast, I would recommend that.
It's funny. I'll look on my phone, and those little red
Oh,
dots,
drive you
those
crazy, though.
numbers, they like draw you in.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that I'm missing? But I think it's great. I think that for me, it's kind of been the theme of my year last year. I would describe myself as somebody who can say no easily. I don't have a problem. I would describe myself as I don't have an issue with saying no to things. But at the same time, last year I realized how many things that I wasn't saying no to, that I needed to say no to. And I don't know if you guys have ever had that experience where maybe you've looked around to your left and to your right in your life and you've thought, man, I am doing too much. I am saying yes to too many things that aren't of value, that aren't the direction that I want to take my life. And I don't know if you guys could describe any moment in your life like that.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any? I mean, I
Oh,
feel like
yeah.
I've always hit the nail on the head.
You've always been
so-
perfect at it.
Just kidding.
No, I think for me, saying no just depends on the area of life because I feel like this is kind of different, I think, than a lot of extroverts, but I don't feel like I struggle a whole lot with people pleasing. So when it comes to maybe there's that kind of a little bit of an aggressive contrarian side of me that when it comes to like saying no in certain areas of my life, when it comes to like boundaries or whatever, I feel like I'm decent at that. I think for me it's more personal. Like I feel like my disciplines are really, really on or in certain areas really off.
Yeah.
And so saying no in some seasons to sleeping in instead of getting up early and doing the thing that I would do to get up early.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if I'm in a season where I'm in a stretch where I'm not healthy and working out and, as disciplined in diet as I want to be. I feel like one of the toughest things in life is to be disciplined in multiple areas at once. And so, yeah, I definitely resonate with times in my life where I'm like, no, okay, whether it's a project, writing the book, no, this weekend I don't need to keep going out to restaurants and keep going out to do this and finding things to distract myself with and going to the movies. I need to say no to all those things so that I can focus on the one big thing that a year from now will matter.
Yeah.
That's true.
I think as you ask that question, there are a few things that come to my mind that I've struggled with in saying no. In some areas, I'm really disciplined. then there's other. I think there's a few things I can think of, like professionally and personally. Personally, I think one of the things that I've grown in maturity, but I'm the type of person that when my mind gets locked onto wanting something, I do not rest until I figure out a way to get it. And
Give me an example.
it doesn't matter whether it's just it's a purchase. It could be like whether it's like, oh, I really want those pair of shoes, or oh, I really just anything like that. It's just like a simple purchase, or it could be even as bigger as like, oh, I want a new car. Well, no, I've said no to that. I don't really ever do that, so I guess that's not a great one. But just that
You
desire.
can keep your cars for a long time.
I do, but that desire for wanting something, just whatever it is, I can't think just right off the top of my head, but just something that I want, I will pursue and figure out a way. Okay, I'll sell this. Okay, I'll wait here. I'm gonna get this, but I will figure out a way to get it, one way or another.
Yeah, I feel
And
like
so
yeah,
that for me has been like trying to teach myself to go, I want that, I don't need that, and is that really a good idea right now? And a lot of times it's not bad. These aren't bad things. I think it's more about the discipline of fostering an ability to say no. I think that's what's so hard in our country today.
Yeah.
So I would say, unless you want to interject with that, but I've got, like, personally, I think the two hardest things would be if I want to buy something. Again, it's not very often, but if I do, I will obsess until I figure out how to get it, whatever it's financially or whatever. The other one would be diet. Like, being able to say no. I've been graced with a high metabolism. I always have worked out, and I think
So
it's
cocky.
And I think it's just has nothing to do with it. I didn't get to pick my metabolism. That it's just afforded me to be able to kind of eat whatever for most of my life. You know what I mean? Here and
Yes,
there, but
I
it's,
know.
you know,
Yeah,
I've
we
been to
know.
lunch with
it's
you.
afforded me to eat however I want. Not always, but yes.
Yes.
Right now, it's not that way, and so that's part of why I'm doing this particular fast, and it is because I really needed to be able to say no. I need to be like, and because I want to start trying to change my eating habits. And I
Yeah.
say that every year, but I need something like this to kind of develop new patterns. That's
Yeah,
what I like
no,
about 21.
I resonate with that. I too am cursed with this kind of. I mean, really, it's a privilege, but that I can eat
here
pizza
we
every
go.
night, and the six pack never really fades. It's
I don't have a
always
six-pack,
there.
So,
But I do resonate. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, from a past episode we talked about passion. And my personality type of just whatever I do, I go all out can be
Yeah.
just good or bad.
Yeah.
Because I can say no to everything, or the passionate side of me could lean even into addictive
Yeah.
traits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, again, can be really, really good or bad because I'm either going to go for it or I'm not.
yeah.
And
I think professionally, so in ministry, I think it's been hard to say no because here's what my struggle is in. Every time I'd be asked to do something, it would be hard for me to tell people no because I want them to approve of me, like me, do whatever. And so any request. And it's taken me a while, and I think it's still a struggle that I have. I don't do a lot of weddings. I don't do a lot of funerals anymore. Honestly, that's just for a capacity thing and my role in what I'm trying to do. And we hire staff and pastors who are good at them and can do those things and have the time. Why? Because they're not spending half of their week trying to prepare a message for the weekend, and they're not dealing with maybe the budget stuff, and they're not dealing, with some of the projects that we've had to do. And so because of that,
that can cause issues, can't it?
what? Oh,
Well, some people
It's
think that if
hard
you're
to
the
say no
pastor,
to doing a wedding.
huh?
It's hard to say no to doing a wedding.
Well,
it's hard to say no to
because
doing
you
a funeral.
You feel bad because you feel like first of all, it's one of those things where it's like you feel appreciated when they go, I really want you to officiate my wedding.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good feeling. It's like, okay, wow, you value, that you would want me there,
Yeah.
really to officiate it. And a lot of it, I get it, is because they may be in our church and they sit there every week and I'm the primary, preacher. And so they're receiving spiritual guidance from me on a regular basis. And so they go, I'd love to have you there. And even people, there's a thing too where people really come to faith within a church or something that pastor or preacher really becomes much like a spiritual father figure to them.
Yes.
And so it's like you want that person there. I totally understand that. The size of our church doesn't make that really possible, or if it does, I'd be doing them all the time.
Yeah.
And so what's taken me so long, and I'm still there. It is a constant struggle. I just had somebody that I have not talked to in 12 years, who had a family member pass away that wanted me to do the funeral. And I had to kind of make a decision. And it's hard because I had the internal struggle that what are they going to think about me? How are they going to make me feel? And they don't even go to our church. And I just kind of had to politely say, hey, we have staff pastors that we want to do it. I can't do that. There's so much going on, especially at the beginning of this year, that I'm trying to focus on and do. Yeah. And so what I've kind of come to learn is that it's not that I can't always make time. It's that when I say yes to somebody, which every time I'm asked, there's part of me that wants to. I have to say no to somebody else or something else that maybe I'm called to do, or my family time or something like that, because it's not just the wedding, it's meeting with people, it's, preparing, it's going to rehearsal night, it's going to that. And I don't mind doing that. It's just, so that's just an example. It could be, oh, Pastor, I want to meet with you. Well, everybody wants to meet with me because I might be the primary preacher on the platform. And it could be a counseling thing. It could just be like, oh, I just wanted to get to know you. I think that's awesome. There's a people person in me. I want to get to know everybody. Right. But it's like even recently, like I kind of been talking to you, and I don't kind of manage my schedule anymore. I've really kind of had to hand that off. It was weekends, especially in our new facility, 5 or 6 requests. I had weekends where it's five requests a weekend. Hey, if you got some time, I would just love to meet with you, and I would love to connect with you. And a lot of these things are things that you could absolutely meet with them and answer questions if they're new to our church or whatever. I'm not opposed to meeting with people in the church.
And I
really
still
do it.
I'm really a fun conversation.
I know you are.
Like I'd love to talk with somebody.
And I understand. I understand that perspective because you go to a church, you want to connect with the pastor because you want to feel like I can connect with the pastor.
Yep.
And I want to make. That's why I stand. A lot of pastors and larger churches don't do this. I stand out in the foyer before and after the experiences because I am such a people person. I want to connect with people. I want to say hi.
But I think it's funny that you said I'm not a people pleaser. And
I am.
I think that we all are a little bit. Like humans should be people pleasers.
I guess I mean more from the negative connotation. Not that anybody doesn't struggle with that to some degree. Yeah.
But you let me push back on you a little bit because what makes you say that you're not a people pleaser? But when you are also the biggest advocate I know of so like when you're speaking, getting support from a room, like what you're saying, you want to know that it hits the people that you're talking to. And so you'll teach, you're probably the most passionate person I know about getting people to talk back to you while you speak, And I'm not saying you're a people pleaser. I'm saying why would you say so adamantly that I'm not a people pleaser? What's the aversion to that?
Yeah, I think several things. I think one, absolutely. Like the atmosphere of a room matters. And you want to know that what you're saying. I think there's a difference between like people loving and people pleasing. And so for me, the connotation I have in my mind for people pleasing, first off, I think in a spiritual context, Paul said if you live to please people, you can't live to please Christ. So people pleasing, not in the form of I don't want to love people or encourage people, but in the form of do I have this unhealthy, insecure fear and dependency on what people think to the point where it cripples what's valuable in my life. So practically, like I have had to learn and balance my love for people and the fact that I am an extrovert and I love to be with people to can I set healthy boundaries to refresh myself on a weekend so that I don't burn out and I'm still full to actually love people when it matters. Can I people pleasing to the point of another practical example of I guess where I'm sure I struggle with it, but I don't feel like I have so many other struggles that I just don't feel like that's the main one.
Yeah.
And so another practical example would be I feel like one of my areas of non-struggle would be confrontation, where most of the people I know who would say they suffer from people pleasing, one of the first symptoms is they're afraid to confront. And for better or worse, that's something that's not one of those areas that I'm usually afraid to lean into.
Yeah, I think about my wife. Andrew's the sweetest person you'll ever meet, and doesn't love to say no.
Yeah.
Like there's multiple times over the course of our marriage where, and I've done this too. It's just she's a easier target because she's so sweet, where she doesn't love to say no, and she will say yes to dinners and yes to all these things because she genuinely wants to be with people, but that there's sometimes boundaries you have to draw with a no. And I was reading this article on Psychology Today. It was interesting. I just want to read an excerpt from it and see what you guys think. It says there's a lot of talk and a lot to be said for the power of yes. Yes supports risk-taking, courage, an open-hearted approach to life whose grace cannot be minimized. But no is a metal gate that slams shut the window between oneself and the influence of others. It's rarely celebrated.
Yeah.
It's a hidden power because it's both easily misunderstood and difficult to engage. And I thought that was interesting. Like this, no, when you receive it, has a super negative connotation.
Oh, yeah.
Who loves to be told no?
Right.
Not me.
Not me.
Not me.
Yeah.
And I think that how do you tell somebody, okay, I think about moms who discipline their kids. There's some moms who are super, love disciplining and love to tell their kids no. There's other moms who have a really hard time with telling their kids they can't do something or have something. It seems like stealing joy. It seems like thwarting happiness. It seems like crushing an opportunity. And there are people who, have a really hard time with no. And so why is no not negative?
Why is no not negative? Well, it is negative, first. So I think in the context of that is we don't understand sometimes the power of what no leads to and why it's so valuable. I think one of the things that's interesting because they brought up the power of yes and how it's optimistic and how well received it is versus no. And one of the things I heard several years ago that kind of challenged me because I've always kind of had this funny, it's funny, in our relationship, my wife and I, in our family, she's the yes person, I'm the no person. She would, and I'm not saying she won't say no, but, my daughter asked, hey, can you go drive me to Pennsylvania so I can do this? Oh, yeah, I think we could probably do it. It's like, I'm like, heck no, I'm not driving you to Pennsylvania. You know what I mean? It's extremely, But she would be like, I want to figure out how to do it because, well, she wants to do that, and I would love to make that happen for her.
Yeah.
And so my first response,
which is so admirable.
It is great.
I mean, I don't want anybody listening to this thinking that those types of responses.
She's amazing because of
that.
Yes,
the best people in my life,
She'll
people
be
that have
like-
made things
she'll be like,
happen at
"Can
their
you-
own inconvenience.
Yeah, can you drive me over to get my friends and pick them up and go to Taco Bell and do something? No, it's 12:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
My wife's like, yeah, all right, get the keys. Let's go. You want to go? I'll go get them. And I'm like, I'm tired. I'm not doing that. So I heard this thing several years ago as a pastor, I think, that was talking one time. And it kind of challenged me a little bit. And I don't think I've been great at it. And a lot of times I'm joking when they just, but he said, I don't want the first words out of my mouth to always be no.
Right.
And I think as a parent, like that, like it kind of challenged me. It's like when my kids go, Dad, can I have this? No. And even if I don't mean no, I was just jokingly would just say it. And it kind of like, I say no first. With them, here's what's funny. I struggle with people outside of the family.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas it's funny is like we would maybe switch roles where I have a hard time, and I think that's a I'm going to say a flaw, but that's a challenge that I have personally. I'm not saying it's because I'm an Enneagram 3, but I do see like that such that image conscious type of thing that I care how people see me.
Yeah.
That I don't want to let them down, and I feel like they'll be let down if I say no.
Which is
And
interesting.
so I feel like that negative, it does feel negative.
Well, I think one of the things you said that's really important is you looked at your motive.
Yeah.
So you looked at the motive of why you'd be afraid to say no.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, again, as the context of faith, I look at Jesus as the ultimate example. Jesus said no.
Yeah.
There were times he walked by villages that were crying out for him, and he actually went somewhere and got alone with God to replenish.
Yeah.
But he also embodied what I think all of us at the table would always want to embody is he, like you said, is his own inconvenience. He would sacrifice himself. He would put others first. And I think it's that tension and wisdom combined with what's my motivation?
Yeah.
What's my motivation to say yes or to say no?
Yeah. I think I learned something. I remember when it started to make a mental shift for me in ministry professionally about I'm going to say no, and I know I will disappoint this person. It was probably 4 years ago. There was a lady in our church that her mom passed away. She had been to our church, and I'd come to our church, I think, on and off when she could, not a lot. But I'd kind of recognized her a little bit. And she asked when her mom passed, she was, and it's hard. Listen, I've done a wedding and a funeral because somebody has said it was their dying wish that you would perform something for them. I'm not lying. I performed a wedding that way, and I performed a funeral.
Oh my gosh.
And so here's what happened. The situation, I had a lady that's coming here. Hey, my mom loved you so much. She loved the church. You heard all that. Like, would you do her funeral? Would you, that's what she wants, would want. And again, I don't mind, and I've done them. Like, I don't mind. It's just that ends up kind of being the narrative every time somebody has someone that either needs a wedding or funeral. You know what I mean? The church, they love you so much. Often they lead with that, and so I didn't know her at all, but I felt like just this intense pressure. Again, I was kind of shifting away from doing those. That's why we had campus pastors. That's why we had all these people. That's kind of what they're hired to be able to help minister in those moments, because we do want to care for people in those moments. It's not that I don't want to, and it's a capacity thing. And so I did the funeral. Met with the family, all that stuff. I would say I noticed, like, almost shortly after the funeral was over, that lady who was a part of church never came back to church. Well, she came like once or twice, never that. And I all of a sudden I realized I'm trying to do this because I'm afraid that you're not gonna come to church here anymore. I'm gonna disappoint you so badly if I say no. There's that. And then I did it, and then they went around and they turned around and stopped coming, stopped it, like, altogether, which probably had nothing to do with me or that. But then I realized I'm doing something that I kind of have said with the Sabbath I'm not going to primarily do. You know what I mean? For something like that. And then, I did it because of the pressure, and the result came out that way. I'm not going to say offended, but a little bit offended.
Oh, for sure.
I was a little bit offended, and to the point where it's like, okay, if that's going to be the result anyways, why am I going to put myself out there? Again, if you're listening to this, I want to be able to minister to people in those situations, but it's just about being able to have the capacity and the balance to do it. So I would have been able to hear that like, oh, he doesn't really care about people in a church. That's not the case. In fact, that's my struggles.
Oh, and
you know what I mean?
From my vantage point, there's no one who wants to be in the action more than you do. You definitely want to be in the action way more than Russ does. That's for sure. Just kidding. But
we all know that. It's because he doesn't.
No shifted for me when we read this book. It's called. Oh, do you remember what it's called?
Ruthless Elimination.
No. The Chris Voss.
Oh, the art of negotiation, or the art of negotiation.
Art of negotiation. I'm gonna look at that. But
yeah.
Anyway, he talks. It's this guy who was
former
FBI head negotiator, head international terrorist, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like the negotiating guy would go to Harvard and teach all these people how to negotiate and out negotiate the best, negotiation teachers at Harvard. And one of his, the way he teaches that you negotiate is that you want to get somebody to say no.
Yeah. You do.
He
That's
said
the first thing you do in a negotiation.
it's the most reverse psychology thing ever, but you want to draw a no from somebody. Why? Because no, when you say no, you feel safe.
It's empowering.
It's empowering.
No, when you have someone on the other side.
Right.
It's
but
empowering.
if I said, so for example, this is one of probably the way that I have brought that into my vernacular is that you never say when you want to speak with somebody, is this a good time? Hey man, is this a good time? Because if you say yes, you don't know what you're committing to. You don't know how long you're going to be, you don't know how long you're going to be tied up in a conversation with me. Have you ever had somebody come to your office or come to you who wants to?
Usually for me, every Sunday, it's, hey, do you have a minute?
Yeah.
And it's
Like, well, I don't.
Is it a minute?
really.
And there's all these other people that I want to connect with that I
Yes.
just want to say hi to, because I want to see my community. And
As opposed to saying, is this a bad time? Hey, I have a conversation that's going to take a couple minutes. This is a bad time.
Yeah.
Or is 1 p.m. a bad time for you?
yeah,
And that way, you say, no, it's not a bad time. You can almost tell in the response and the answer that there's like you said, an empowering effect. I'm empowered to spend time with you because I got to say no. There's a safety. There's a ownership that you can take when you say no. And I just think it's interesting that, and what I'm hearing you guys say, and the theme that's woven throughout this conversation so far, is that we all have to, at certain points, and we know this inherently, but we all have to say no. And if we say yes to the wrong things, we're saying no to the best things. Mm-hmm. And so how can we say the difficult no's so that we can say the best yes? Does that make sense?
That's one of the concepts of Chris Voss's book. It's called Never Split the Difference.
Yes.
I just looked it up while we were doing this, and he talks about you get people to say no to get to the yes.
Yes.
Right? It's a sales technique to get people to do that. So what you're kind of twisting that though and saying, how do we get? Is that what you said? How do we get to the place where we understand? Is that what you're asking? Like that we say no to get to a better yes?
Sure. I think that we will oftentimes avoid the difficult no
Correct.
because it's difficult.
It is.
But understanding that we have to engage in the difficult no in order to get to the best yes.
I agree. I think the only way that you can get to that place is if you deal with the internal motivation of why it's hard to say no. I don't think you're just going to go, oh, you heard him talking about that. Well, I'm just going to start telling people no because it won't last. I think you have to kind of do like we're saying, go, why am I struggling to say no to every request that comes through? Even though I know that's not what I should be putting my energy into. That's not what I should be putting my focus on. And for me, like I said, when it comes to, again, you separate to professionally, I think it's just taken a long journey, but a lot of it is just an internal self-awareness. I have started to see more lately that though I fit stuff into my schedule and I can make anything work, because I've figured out how to make everything work, that what I'm not realizing is getting robbed is my energy and my capacity to create something else that would be significantly valuable in our church, our community, or whatever.
Yeah.
And by cramming everything that you can imagine and saying yes to everything, every person that wants to say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Do you have this? Can I meet and talk with you? Can we get lunch? I mean, there's some weeks where it's like, and now because we do this, I have almost no window open, but then it's like, hey, can we do lunch on this? And I have people from the church that want to. So I've had to kind of it's a journey. I'm not there yet, but the internal motivation of I struggle because I want to please people because I care way too much about how they think of me.
Yeah.
I think that is kind of, but it's only come through trial and error. It's only come through kind of like doing stuff and then getting hurt.
Yeah.
And for me, and so I do think you have to deal with that internal motivation because some I think are, like you said, some are. I think it's a bigger struggle than others. And it's like I will confront stuff, but I don't love it, which some people might be surprised because I could be somewhat confrontational, but I don't necessarily love it. Whereas you probably lean in way quicker and way faster than I do, and it's probably connected a little bit to that, which is funny because we're the same Enneagram number, but
We are, yeah. Yeah, I think part of it is wiring and personality. Part of it is, I think some of the roles I've been put in, and I think part of it is I always think the pain of confrontation is nothing compared to the pain of what's left unaddressed.
yeah.
And I know we're joking, but part of me having to say no is because I do love people. Like, I do love being around people. Like, I am constantly, I don't want to say, especially somebody that doesn't know me the way I'm describing it, I am constantly in coffees and dinners a lot. And I think over the years, I've had mentors that have been a lot older than me and a lot further down the road that have warned me from their journey. Hey, Russ, if you don't make sure you have balance, you'll eventually burn out and be good to nobody because you keep saying yes to everybody. And so I think the answer to your question of how do you say the right no's is it comes back to me over and over again to that word called vision. If I don't have a big yes to filter out what to say no to, then I'll say no to everything and yes to nothing.
Yes.
So just get real practical. The reason I'm here is because I said some painful no's in my opinion, to say yes to the best. I am sitting in a yes that took some painful no's.
Yeah.
Yes.
My personal journey when I was in Atlanta, I knew my last 2.5 years I was on the way out, and so thankful for that season. So I want to be careful. Anybody listening, I'm so thankful for that season. But when you know that you're in transition and a season's wrapped up, you're eager to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, because I am nothing special, I had some opportunities. I went to a few places that for whatever reason offered things. And I faced some relational, again, I want to be careful. Me and you have a mutual acquaintance, somebody I really looked up to. They got really frustrated with me. And I remember getting the text that says, hey, you said no to some really good things. I don't think I can help you anymore. And I had to really dig deep and say, the vision I've written down, the yes that I'm believing for, do I believe it enough to keep saying no to some good things in a tough season so that I can say the best yes? And praise God, that right now, I'm so thankful that I'm sitting in what I waited to say yes to.
Yeah, I love that.
And so I think, to me, to get practical, 2 ways to, maybe a phrase would be to grow your no.
Yeah.
Is I think the biggest thing is vision. If you don't have a big yes, that'll filter out.
I agree.
To filter out your no's. I think the second thing, I think no's like a muscle. That if you don't learn, actually when you threw out the topic on Monday, there's been a couple times since then where I was like, just for the fun of it, I want to grow my no. There's a couple times I was even tempted by I don't know, a food that maybe I could have, indulged in that wouldn't have broken the fast. I was like, you know what? I want an opportunity to grow my no. Because I remember a few years ago I read this book by Judah Smith called How's Your Soul? Talk about how to have a healthy life. And it was the 4 R's. It was rest, recreation, career, work, whatever that R was. And then the 4th one was restriction. And he's like, we tend to look at restriction as a negative thing. He said, but if you think about it, healthy restriction is actually one of the most beautiful, liberating things for your soul. Because if you don't, I heard a quote a long time ago by Rick Joyner. He said, some of the things that you think will lead to your greatest freedom will actually lead to your greatest bondage. Oh, yeah. And some of the things you think will lead to your greatest bondage will actually lead to your greatest freedom. And I think, one of the things we learn is the ability to say healthy no's is actually one of the most life-expanding things.
For sure.
I think a great example of that comes to my mind that I've preached on this as well, and when it comes to finances, is people don't understand it, and that's why I agree with what you said about vision. If people don't have a vision for their finances, like a vision that we want to be out of debt, or a vision that we want to live with this much margin, or a vision that we want to have this much of an emergency fund, or we want to save to go on trips, then they're going to say yes to everything impulsively they want. We want a new car. We want to go on this vacation. I want to buy her this new ring. I want to, and that's what plummets people into, as you said, bondage. Debt is bondage. As, Proverbs says that, 22:7. So the borrower is slave to the lender. And I feel like one of the things, a message that I shared years ago when I was talking about debt was, and this I think was to help people, because I think it's the hardest thing to get out of debt. Most people want to get out of debt, but aren't willing to change anything of their lifestyle. It's like, well, we're in debt and we're not going the right direction, but we want to get, it's new year, new resolution. We're going to get out of debt. Okay, what are you canceling? You know, you're going to a flip phone. You're getting rid of your smartphone, your data plan. Are you going to cancel?
Right.
You're going to cancel cable. You're going to cancel. What are you going to cancel? What are you going to say no to?
Right.
So you can get that. Most people won't do it.
Yeah.
They can't do it. And so one of the things that I think is kind of helpful when it comes to that example, finances and vision, is I came up with this phrase, and I said this years ago, adapted from kind of what like you get Dave Ramsey and all of it say, but it's not no, it's not now. And trying to encourage people to say the things that you want aren't necessarily bad. It's just the way you go about and the timing to get it. And so for people to be able to go, I want to be able to go on a vacation like this. We want to buy a house like this. I want to drive a new car like this. That's great. That's fine. Those are okay things to have one day. But the reason why we're in so much bondage now is because people can't say no. And we got a piece of plastic that'll allow us to say yes to everything. And so because of that, they're in deep bondage, and it's not as freeing as what they think. And so I think for another way is to kind of, like, especially with finances, to go, it's not no. It's not now.
Yeah.
One day I want to, but I am
That's
going.
a really hard concept for people like me because I think my biggest fear is living a life that.
Didn't you almost try to buy a car just recently?
Stop.
Okay.
As-
I'm gonna bring it in.
My-
And why?
Stop.
Because never mind. Okay.
Self-control.
So-
My turn the other cheek. My biggest fear in life, I think, is to live a life that amounts to nothing. And you know, I've just always been really aware of the brevity of life. Right? Life's like a mist or like a fog. Like that is always on the top of my mind. So living a fulfilling life and experiencing things now has been. I wake up thinking about it, you know, and so that's probably the biggest fear that haunts me, and that's hard when it comes to saying no. But I resonate so much with what you said. I want my life to not just amount to something, but to amount to the best thing. I want my life to resemble more a sniper rifle than it would a shotgun. You know, I don't want to just spray my effort and my energy towards and hope that I hit something. Like, that's not the life that I want to live. I want to live a life that's super focused, that has the long vision in mind, and I want to have a target. I want to live my life not by default, but I want to live it by design. I want to have a vision. And that's something that nobody can give you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You can't just stumble upon a vision for your life. I think that's probably my biggest challenge for people that are listening is that you'll have certain individuals that are super hyper vision oriented, that know what they want. To you, my challenge would be, is your vision about the right things or about the best things? Is your vision simply material? Or are you thinking about the type of parents you want to be? Are you thinking about the type of kids you want to raise? Are you thinking about the type of, instead of just the wealth that you're building, are you thinking about the legacy you want to leave behind? Right? Instead of just the things that you want your kids to be able to participate in, are you thinking about your presence and what that means to them in the home? I want to challenge your mindset there a little bit. And then I also see a group of people who really are skating by life, just kind of floating right along, and want to just have a good job and a good family. And there's nothing wrong with that. But as always, I want to challenge you too. What's your vision? What's your why for living? Because without a why, it's really hard to say no.
Yeah.
At least a proper no. At least a no that grows you.
Yeah.
And so
Well-
the vision piece really resonates with me.
Yeah, it's the old quote, decision by vision. Your vision will determine the decision of yes or no, and so important, not just to live a meaningful life, but also not to wreck your life.
Yes.
Again, not to get overly biblical, but with the story of Esau and Jacob. In the Old Testament, there's this family, and heritage was huge back then, even bigger than it was now. And there's this whole concept of like the firstborn. They get most of the wealth, and they get the family power, and they get the rights and the privilege and the land. And there's these two dueling brothers. They're twins, and it was supposed to go to Esau, the older one. And one day, there's this old story where Esau walks in and he's been hunting for 3 days and hitting none of his targets. He is starving. Like, I mean, just frustrated, starving. Isn't that always when we make the worst decisions? Yep. And walks in, and Jacob, mama's boy, has like this bowl of soup that smells really good. And what's crazy is it's soup. It's not even steak. It's not even like filet mignon and lobster and southern mac and cheese like casserole. Like, it's even at its best, soup is just okay.
Yeah. Agreed.
But he was so starving and so empty that it looked amazing. And Jacob literally convinced him to sell the future for a bowl of soup. That's the power of vision, not just to have an amazing life, but also like in the empty seasons and the dry seasons and the painful seasons. My worst mistakes have been in those seasons where I felt so just dry and empty and hungry, and I got to fill myself with something, and I lack the self-control to say no, because really, no is a self-control thing.
Yes.
And one of the greatest ways to grow that self-control in a practical way is to keep the bowl of vision greater than the bowl of the moment.
Right.
So that I can say no to that to say a really good yes later.
I think, what I hear you saying, and I'm just thinking like different levels of application for all of this. In your marriage, learning to say no to someone outside of your marriage is something that can keep you from wrecking your marriage, right? And it's going to be in those hard seasons. But how do you do that? You have a vision for what kind of marriage you want to have, right? You can apply that to anything. Finances, parenting, your professional life. One of the things that I love that you said about learning to grow your no is here's where I would challenge every single person listening or watching this. If you think that it's weird to do a fast, I would argue and say that is a great way to grow your no.
That's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you kind of go, that's weird. Like, I'm talking about people in the church, people that believe that go, I don't really do fasting. It's hard. I know, but you know what's harder? Saying yes to the wrong things and it messing your life up.
Right.
And so I would just kind of bring it back to the idea of the fast. One of the things that I love about it, but I hate, it's a love-hate relationship with fasting because I love food and I love eating, but I love the rhythm of it because it is teaching me to say no. And a fast for me is different than a diet. And I'll tell you why. A lot of times there's similar things physically, okay, but I approach it differently. Even though you can kind of, you're fasting foods, which you could say is a diet. And there's a lot of people that fast foods, different foods for bodybuilding, and they fast foods, and it's not even spiritual. They give up certain things. For me, where it's different is a fast is a commitment to God.
Yes.
I can't break it.
Yes.
I can't even be tempted to break it. I mean, I'd be tempted to want to eat something. I came out last night of my room. It was late in the evening, and I probably had 700 calories of food, maybe, yesterday, all day. Like today so far, I've had a handful of almonds. That's all I've eaten today. And I come out of the bedroom and I smell this food, and my daughter is opening up.
Lorelei took my daughter to Taco Bell again.
No, they had a waffle iron open, and she was like making waffles. And Audrey's like, "Hey, do you want a waffle?" I was like, "No."
Yes, but
no, I don't. But
The power
but then
of a
then she
no.
was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you were fasting." You know what I mean? It's like I'm sorry, tempted. I almost can't be tempted in a fast because it is a commitment that I've made to God, and I feel like I cannot break that.
Yes.
So there's something about the spirit, and that's not the whole reason why I do it, but I do believe it's growing my ability to say no. Doing a spiritual fast and creating room to say yes to something that God can do in my life. And so that's when we talk about a no to a yes, fasting and prayer to me is a no to a yes.
I think that's a great way to put a bow on this conversation. And I'll just say, the models in my life of self-control have been leaders in the church. And so I learn every single day from watching the people that I love and admire and respect and look up to, because they take self-control, they take their no very seriously because they have a big why. They have a big vision. They have a big yes that they're chasing. And surround yourself, if you're listening, surround yourself with people who have a big why, who have a big vision. If you have friends, if you have close acquaintances, not that you can't love on them and be friends to them, but your closest people and the people you look up to and the people that you look against your life and compare your life to, I would hope and I would advise even that these people have the strongest why and the strongest vision. The reason that I care so much about my financial longevity, building wealth, leaving a legacy for my kids, avoiding debt, is because I saw people in the church who took that seriously and who had such a big financial why that they were able to say no to the things that everybody else around me was buying and feeling sorry for themselves that they didn't have. The reason that I care so much about having a devotional life every single morning is because people like you guys who your strength and your joy and your vision comes from that time you spend with God first thing in the morning. You say no to a lot of other things so you can carve that time out. And that's transformed who you are. And your why is so huge that it's hard not to be encouraged by it. It's hard not to be filled by that. And the people who have the most self-control, I think, are the people that you want to surround your life with. And that's what we hope to be here at this place. And that's why we do things like a fast. That's why we give up things like eating, giving up things like perusing Facebook and Instagram for so long, is because that God has a big why and a big yes that he has for all of us, and he's inviting you into that if you grow your know and if you go on this journey. So join us in the fast. We'd love for you to. You can go on our website, thex.church/fast. We have a fasting guide on there that Pastor Russ wrote and created. We love for you to hop on if you're not fasting, social media or Instagram Daily Encouragement. And we hope that this is something that God can use to really pour vision into your life. And if you're feeling like there's nowhere to go, you don't know where to turn, that God has a purpose for you, God has a plan for you, God has a vision for you, and that we're all testaments of that. So we love you. If you're listening, I love you both. You guys are gifts to me, and I can't wait for next week.
Awesome. Let's do it.